Okay, so portrait photography, and we're also going to talk about lighting within the same thing. So, we are going to talk about four main types of portrait photography: formal, environmental, candid, and self portraits. So, we've briefly talked about landscape photography, which is pictures of places. We've talked a little bit about still life photography, which is pictures of things. And now we're going to talk about portrait photography, which is pictures of people. So, first off, formal portraits. I want you to pause and take a look at this and tell me if you think this is indirect or direct lighting. Pause. Okay, so when you come back, hopefully you're able to identify that this is most likely indirect lighting. Now, you might also be thinking, well, maybe it was direct because there's this bright highlight here and some shadows over here. But I think that this is in general a kind of indirect lighting. So this is the closest to the light source of the window here. And yes, there's a little bit more of a highlight, but for the most part, everything is pretty even in value. There's nothing particularly bright or particularly dark outside of her black dress. Now, some things to notice about the portrait style. She's sitting, there's a plain background around her, and she's not really doing anything other than sitting and looking nice for the picture. So again, is this indirect or direct lighting? Pause. When you come back, hopefully you were able to identify that this one is also using indirect light. And how do we know? Because their faces in particular are all pretty even in value. Now, skin complexion aside, we can see that she's a little bit lighter than some of the children around her, but in general, there's not any really bright highlights or dark shadows. The background looks dark, but I think it's just a black sheet, just to keep it plain and unassuming as compared to the beautiful smiling faces of the family. And this one, indirect or direct lighting, I'm not even going to ask you to pause. What's your gut instinct? Hopefully you said indirect. Again, nothing is super, super bright or super, super dark. It's all kind of in the middle, plain Jane, whatever. We've got a wedding. Indirect or direct? I think it's indirect. So this one is kind of odd compared to the others because it uses direct lighting. So this picture is of former President Richard Nixon, and he's sitting in the Oval Office, and we can tell it's direct lighting because there's a bright light on his forehead, there's some bright highlights on the edges of him, but then away from the light are these really dark shadows, and it plays up his age and, I don't know, some kind of venerability, whatever. But it's really unusual for formal portraits. Formal portraits usually want to use indirect lighting to keep it as plain and soft and even as it can be. Formal photography or formal portraits are very deliberate. They're very posed, okay? It's no random snapshots. They've got simple, plain backgrounds. The person is the main focus, and the background should in no way overpower the person. So the background is totally backseat to the person. So if you think about your graduation pictures, your LinkedIn photos, your photos for the yearbook, right? Family Christmas cards. Those are all kinds of formal portraits. They're very posed. They can often be uncomfortable because they just don't match with who you are. Environmental portraits, not to be confused with landscape photography, environmental portraits. So take a second, pause, indirect or direct lighting. Hopefully you come back with direct lighting because of the very bright highlights on the yarn and the edges of her, and then the dark shadows in her lap and away from the light. The next question I have, excuse me, is about the place. Do you think that this is something that she regularly does in this place? Or is this something that she does anywhere? Right? Take a look at this one, indirect or direct. Hopefully when you come back, you came up with indirect. If I were to guess, I would think that this was taken on a cloudy day because it all looks very gray and dreary in the same level. Also, he doesn't seem to have sunglasses. What's going on in this picture? What do you see? I'm actually just going to talk you through this one because there's some things that after you hear about it, might make more sense. So this is an environmental portrait. I'm going to assume that this is some kind of sports memorabilia shop. I don't know exactly what it is, but there's a lot of things. There's stuff all over the walls, there's stuff on the doors, there's stuff on the ceiling. Like, this place is packed. And the artist used direct lighting to help play up the chaos of that. So this guy looks grumpy and kind of old, and the direct light makes his wrinkles stand out more and gives them really bad RBF. But it also serves to make this chaos in the background look more intense. Direct lighting makes things look more intense. So if this were all evenly lit and softly lit, it wouldn't feel as overwhelming and tumultuous as it does with the high contrast between the bright highlights and the dark shadows. So here we've got this creepy train situation, old man. The colors also serve to make it look creepy, but this person is in a place. What's the story? Okay, we've got fruits, we've got some kind of building that seems to have more fruits, and then this cheeky looking dude standing outside. Maybe he's going to take our money, maybe he's going to give us fruit, who knows. This person, okay, we can tell who she is by what's around her. We can see what's in the background, what's in her hands, and where she is. So we know that she's an artist. Student, in bed, boom, pretty relatable. So environmental portraits are emphasizing the place as well as the person. I know it says more than the person on my screen, but bear with me. So it's environmental portraits because the environment that the person is in tells just as much of the story. So if you took the person out of the photo, it would still tell a story. It can be posed or unposed. So just for a second here, we'll go back to this lady. Would we know that she's an artist if she were in a bus? Would we know that she was an artist if this picture was of her in a kitchen or in a living room? So what is it about the place that she's in that's important about who she is? Same thing with this guy. Would we know that he's a fruit seller if we just saw him walking down Payne Avenue? Probably not. So in environmental portraits, the place is telling us something about the person. Again, posed or unposed, he probably didn't pose for that. She probably did. Still environmental portraits. The next kind we're talking about is candid portraits. What is happening here? Is there something actively happening? Okay. I'm just going to breeze through these ones really quickly. I'm not even going to talk to you about lighting just yet. So hopefully you were able to notice, candid photography is photography that is in the moment. So candid portraits are those things of like, hey, let's take a picture. There is a whole app that was dedicated to this kind of photography. It's since been kind of overrun for a variety of other purposes, but Snapchat was originally just created for capturing those moments, right? Just to capture those important little snapshots in time. Okay, and then the availability for a limited time also plays to the idea that life is fleeting, these moments are fleeting, and you can only save them for so long. They're either completely unposed or planned in less than a minute. So they're just really quick, and they're really meant to capture the moment as it's happening. So if formal portraits are just talking about the who, environmental portraits talk about the who and the what, or the who and the where. Candid photography, or candid portraits, emphasize the who and the when. So this is the person in the moment. So it can also, I don't want to get you confused, but like this might be considered an environmental portrait because it is a musician performing with his band. He is in his environment. We wouldn't know that this guy was a musician if we didn't see him in this environment. But I put it in the candid section because it's so in the moment. He is actively playing. He is not posed. I don't think he even knows this picture is happening. His eyes are shut. He is focused on that music. This guy is not worrying about who's taking pictures. He is just telling us some kind of story. These girls, I don't know what they were doing, probably hanging out, having a good time when they were like, we should take a picture and remember the moment. Snap. Okay? Kiddos are kiddos. There's basically only candid portraits where they're concerned. Okay, parties. So in these, the lighting isn't something you can so much control as trying to make sure that it's working with what you're doing. So making sure that you're standing in exactly the right way if it's a quick picture. To make sure that if it's a really dark area, you turn on your flash so your camera, turns on the bright light so you can actually capture something. So lighting is less a factor in the planning, but you can still enjoy and appreciate how it affects these pictures. So like this one was probably in a darker area and they used flash. And I say that because shiny foreheads, shiny cheeks, okay? There's probably some light around, but they needed a little extra to get it there. So again, candid, in the moment, super quick, no planning. Last one we're going to talk about, self-portraits. Sorry, I'm going super fast with these. So if you notice, this one is done in the reflection. Okay, so here's a mirror. You can see the street view away, and here's the photographer down here. This is Gordon Parks, one of the foremost photographers of the 20th century, I would like to say. Super interesting individual, super great person it seems like. I didn't know him personally, but in reading about him, he's just really interesting. So this particular picture, I think, was done on a timer where you set the camera down and tell it to wait a certain amount of time before it takes the picture. And I think that he was using some kind of direct light. And why do I say that? I see this bright highlight on his nose, and all of the light is centralized on his face with just a little bit reaching past. Otherwise, his hands are in deep shadow. Like I said, bright highlights on his face. It seems like there's a wide range of values. And this helps to show that it's kind of a shady kind of action. Like, we don't know what he's doing. He might be being mischievous and playful. He might be doing something illegal. I don't know if it's illegal to crawl in and out of manhole covers, but that's what he's doing. So if it were more evenly lit, it might feel more acceptable and less, like, mysterious. We've got another reflection. But reflections like this can show you more about the person because maybe this photographer is really interested in motorcycles. So maybe if you find something like the reflection on a shiny refrigerator, it can show that you really like being in your kitchen. If it shows your reflection in the bathroom with all of your makeup and everything around you, it can show your obsession with that. Totally fine. It just helps to tell your story even more. Harsh direct light from behind, shadow in front, boom, you've got a self-portrait that just uses your shadow. Still perfectly acceptable. I think this is another one that uses a timer. And this one has more indirect lighting. Everything is kind of softly lit. Here we've got a silhouette. So we can only see the outline of the person, really, against the bright background. If we could see him more clearly, I think that he would just kind of blend into the background. But because he's so dark compared to the bright background, right, that is where we get our intensity and our story. So self-photography or self-portrait photography, this one might be dancing, might be a fan, who knows. Be all or some part of you. It can be a reflection, your foot, your shadow, your silhouette, your hair, reflection of the shadow of your foot, whatever. It can just be a picture you take of yourself, or it can even be symbolic. If you have something that really represents you and who you are, you can take a picture of it and it is considered a self-portrait. Okay? So, we have 30 seconds left. Formal, environmental, not to be confused with landscape. candid, and self-portraits. These are the 4 main types of portrait photography. How does lighting interact with them? It's up to you. Otherwise, I hope that this made sense as a super quick run through, and I hope that you have a great day.